So I guess we'll move on now. I suppose in this case, Wes Anderson didn't really write a hit play and direct it. At least it was commercially a hit, though, I guess. So maybe he's not sweating that either, Scott. Let's talk about Rushmore.
Yes, so in Rushmore, Jason Schwartzman's Max Fisher very much enjoys his robust schedule of varied extracurricular activities at the Swiss Rushmore Preparatory School, although it turns out that his teachers are rather less impressed with his academic performance. Given a final warning to shape up or ship out, a plot arc that seems to be heading in an entirely conventional Ferris Bueller-esque way takes a sudden right turn when Max becomes, let's euphemistically say, romantically obsessed with new teacher Rosemary Cross, played by Olivia Williams. Further complications occur when his, let's reduce this to friend, Bill Murray's Herman Bloom, a crumpled, lonely industrialist, also takes a fancy to Rosemary, setting off a spiral of conflicts ranging from minor to stalkerific, culminating in Max booting from the school he is so closely tied to his identity and the loss of his few friends. Now, Max is, I find, a compelling character and at once far more adult and far more childish than the adults around him. He is by turns a really sympathetic character and a monster, grounded and wildly deluded, but all of the time a fun character to watch. I think it also marked the first time I'd really seen Murray embody that sadly hollow, defeated character that he's returned to time and time again over the past few decades with traditionally excellent results.
Yeah, nobody does... Oh, it's like hangdog without the guilt, isn't it? And nobody's like kind of that deflated, defeated, vacant, hollow expression like Bill Murray. And it'll probably come to its pinnacle in The Life Aquatic, which we'll come to shortly. But I think here, a few years before Lost in Translations, where it's really starting. And it's... I don't know how you can get so much mileage out of effectively switching your face off. That's what it seems like. But
becoming the human
impressive
embodiment of a sigh.
Yes.
So if there's a flaw in the film, it's come through more through my evolved understanding of women's situation in modern life. I mean, it's not that Max's actions towards Rosemary were ever not seen as creepy and stalkery, but it's easier to understand Max's actions as youthful hijinks, ultimately harmless, in an environment when there was less understanding of how threatening and demeaning harmless, quote-unquote harmless behaviour can be seen in a world where you can't readily tell who the harmless and the dangerous men are. So, that said, on returning to this for the first time in quite some time, I think Olivia Williams does quite a fine job of capturing this, I think. So perhaps it was more a flaw with me of yesteryear than it was with the film itself. You could argue this film's about a lot of things, but one that doesn't really say all that much about any of them. Obsession, relationships, class identity, class identity. They all briefly get landed on before flitting off to some other aspect, which is something perhaps common across most of Anderson's work, but it's no less fun for it. If you think you'll be turned off by the quirkier aspects of his more recent work, then this would be a good entry point into his canon. Perhaps more so than Bottle Rocket, but it's still... If you squint at it and look funny, you still think it was a conventional film for the most part until probably until the plays towards the end, which is perhaps pushing it a bit for a high school play.
But what production values, Scott?
Yes, what production values? Higher than most of the rest of the film, strangely enough. Yeah, hugely enjoyable. Still really funny to come back to in these days. It being a bit more of the kind of melancholy, having a bit more of a darker edge to it in places, I think does give it a bit more teeth than a lot of Anderson's other work. I think that's more or less held up today. It's still quite high on my list of favourite Anderson films. It's perhaps a little different from the stuff he's now more famous for. I think it has a bit more of a obvious hint towards sort of analysing one character in particular, as opposed to just being some big ensemble piece of entertainment, which a lot of his later stuff does. I think this does at least present a little bit of a challenge to a teen's identity in that sort of realm, but it does it without feeling particularly pretentious or being particularly dark for most of it. I think it manages to carry off the sort of sense of unreality with some of Schwartzman's actions as opposed to how he's able to become almost Walter Mitty-esque at points, but actually managed to carry it off into real life and build an aquarium. Like, why not? Off you go. He seems to be able to do it. So yeah, it's a really entertaining film, and yes, I still heartily recommend it after all these years.
I like the kind of visual cohesiveness of this film a lot because and it is Anderson style, and as you go and you see that it's all the same too, is that so often his sets and his composition feel very stage play-like.
Yeah.
Which is why when he got to Fantastic Mr. Fox, for instance, I actually thought he'd found his perfect medium.
Yeah.
Because everything up to that point he had largely set up, like everything, every scene and all the composition of every scene was like everything was like a little diorama.
Yeah.
And animation was the obvious outlet for that. But I like the fact that the setting of the film has this wonderful visual cohesiveness of being like a stage play, and the composition of the scenes almost all feeling like they could be from a stage, and with very often with either figurative or literal theatrical curtains at the side, and that sort of, and the blocking to make things look like that.
Yeah.
I really, really like that style to it, and it's because there are plays that are at the centre of this film. It's sort of cohesive in a different level as well, but also it's just a real trait of Anderson's visual style that he would carry on through all of his work. And it's really obviously whereas that aspect is not so present, or probably not really present at all in Bottle Rocket.
Yeah. But
it's present here and in every film going forward. As to your point about the inappropriateness of Max's behaviour, I had similar thoughts watching this again. It's been quite a while since I last watched Rushmore, and I'd forgotten about that. And certainly 15-year-olds are capable of doing some things, but for the most part, and with the proviso that obviously I'm not a woman, and therefore I'm less like, I've got no real frame of context about how this actually feels. But it seems to me that for 15-year-olds, it's probably more easy to dismiss it as idiocy rather than creepiness.
Yeah.
Which is why the film doesn't feel quite as bad for me as it may have done. I don't want to over-egg that and suggest that that's like a massive part of it. It's more just I think the character isn't really aware of how that would seem to another person.
Yeah. I was saying, obviously, a lot of the film is concerned with how you can relate to other people and the failures of that, both in Bill Murray's character and Jason Schwartzman. So it does tie up in that regard. Just unfortunate that it has to be Olivia Williams gets caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, I think maybe it helps too because, well, at the age of these characters, 3 years is still a lot, but Jason Schwartzman was playing a 15-year-old and he was 18.
Yeah. That's
far less egregious than that often is, and that helps as well, I think. That he doesn't look so very different from a 50-year-old might.
Yeah.
Other things about Rushmore I like. This, I feel genuinely really sorry for Bert Fisher, Maxie's dad, played by Seymour Cassell. It's like, because he's kind of horrible to him. Not to his face. I don't think his dad knows that he's horrible to him, but he feels ashamed of his dad because he's got like a blue collar profession or something, and he's at this rich school and he's trying to make his father seem more exotic, grand, however you want to put it, than he actually is. But his dad's a really nice guy and he's really supportive.
Yeah.
It's not like in a lot of his other films, like fatherhood is a real key theme, and particularly, absent or inadequate fathers. Mm-hmm. This isn't the case in Rushmore. Yeah. When Bill Murray is to his kids, and it's almost like Max, well, they're friends, it's almost like he's trying to adopt a second father or something.
Yeah.
But the actual father he's got is a nice guy who's widowed but trying to do his best to raise his son. So I feel really sorry for him. I think Seymour Cassell plays that role really, really compassionately. And talking of Seymour Cassell, yet another of the actors that would go on to be in numerous Wes Anderson works, even if in one of them he's largely reduced to be eaten by a stop-motion shark. But Rushmore I like a great deal. It really holds up. And I think perhaps is still the best entry point if you've not seen Wes Anderson before, because it's got a fair number of his trademarks, but isn't quite so full-on Wes Anderson-y as a lot of his other films would be.
Yeah, and I think the framework around it is also quite relatable to other films as well. I mean, not just because you've seen Bill Murray do this sort of this sort of role a number of times in previous films. Admittedly, probably mostly in Wes Anderson films, but the kind of coming of age school problem is has enough tropes running through it that you can find some common ground with it, I would think.
Again, talking about Bill Murray, I'd love to see a supercut, and I suspect such a thing may well exist on YouTube. We'll have a look later, but a supercut of Bill Murray just sort of standing, staring blankly in Wes Anderson films. It could probably last 30 minutes, and his expression would never change, and yet it's always entertaining. It's an impressive skill to be able to do so much by doing, well, not just so little, by doing nothing at all. It's A-level standing there and switching everything off.